The tragic deaths of domestic workers, particularly maids in Saudi Arabia, have been an ongoing humanitarian concern. These deaths often stem from a combination of exploitative labor conditions, legal loopholes, abuse, and lack of proper oversight. Before we deep dive into the issue, if you have yet not subscribed to our channel and you like our videos, please support us by hitting the subscribe button and click all to get notification of our all new videos. Now, let us start the video. Why maids keep dying in Saudi Arabia. East African leaders and Saudi royals are among those profiting off a lucrative, deadly trade in domestic workers. On any given day in Kenya, dozens, if not hundreds of women buzz around the Nairobi International Airport's departures area. They huddle for selfies in matching t-shirts, discussing how they'll spend the money from their new jobs in Saudi Arabia. Lured by company recruiters and encouraged by Kenya's government, the women have reason for optimism. Spend 2 years in Saudi Arabia as a housekeeper or nanny, the pitch goes, and you can earn enough to build a house, educate your children, and save for the future. While the departure terminal hums with anticipation, the arrivals area is where hope meets grim reality. Hollow-cheeked women return, often ground down by unpaid wages, beatings, starvation, and sexual assault. Some are broke, others are in coffins. At least 274 Kenyan workers, mostly women, have died in Saudi Arabia in the past 5 years, an extraordinary figure for a young workforce doing jobs that in most countries are considered extremely safe. At least 55 Kenyan workers died last year, twice as many as the previous year. Autopsy reports are vague and contradictory. They describe women with evidence of trauma, including burns and electric shocks, all labeled natural deaths. One woman's cause of death was simply brain dead. An untold number of Ugandans have died too, but their government releases no data. There are people who are supposed to protect these women. Government officials like Fabian Kule Muli, vice chairman of the Labor Committee in Kenya's National Assembly, the powerful committee could demand thorough investigations into worker deaths, pressure the government to negotiate better protections from Saudi Arabia, or pass laws limiting migration until reforms are enacted. But Mr. Muli, like other East African officials, also owns a staffing company that sends women to Saudi Arabia. One of them, Margaret Mute Mweni, said that her Saudi boss had seized her passport, declared that he had bought her, and frequently withheld food. When she called the staffing agency for help, she said a company representative told her, "You can swim across the Red Sea and get yourself back to Kenya." In Kenya, Uganda, and Saudi Arabia, a New York Times investigation found powerful people have incentives to keep the flow of workers moving despite widespread abuse. Members of the Saudi royal family are major investors in agencies that place domestic workers. Politicians and their relatives in Uganda and Kenya own staffing agencies too. The line between their public and private roles sometimes blurs. Mr. Muli's Labor Committee, for example, has become a prominent voice encouraging workers to go overseas. The committee has at times rejected evidence of abuse. Last month, 4 Ugandan women in Maids uniforms sent a video plea to an aid group, saying that they had been detained for 6 months in Saudi Arabia. "We are exhausted from being held against our will," one woman said on the video. The company that sent her abroad is owned by Cedric Nazer, an official with Uganda's governing party who is identified in Ugandan media as the brother of the president, Yoweri Museveni. Nearly every staffing agency refused to answer questions or ignored repeated requests for comment. That includes Mr. Muli, Mr. Nazer, and their companies. Kenya and Uganda are deep in a years-long economic slump, and remittances from foreign workers are a significant source of income. Even after other countries negotiated deals with Saudi Arabia that guaranteed worker protections, East African countries missed opportunities to do the same, records show. Kenya's Commission on Administrative Justice declared in 2022 that worker protection efforts had been hindered by interference by politicians who use proxies to operate the agencies. Undeterred, Kenya's President William Ruto says he wants to send up to 500,000 workers to Saudi Arabia in the coming years. One of his top advisors, Moses Kuria, has owned a staffing agency. Mr. Kuria's brother, a county-level politician, still does. A spokesman for Mr. Ruto, Hussein Mohammed, said that labor migration benefited the economy. He said the government was taking steps to protect workers, including weeding out unlicensed recruiting firms that are more likely to have shoddy practices. He said that Mr. Kuria, the presidential advisor, had no conflict of interest because he does not work on labor issues. In Uganda, recruiting firm owners include a recently retired senior police official and Maj Gen, Leopold Kayanda, a former military attaché to the United States. Recruiting companies work closely with Saudi agencies that are similarly well connected. Descendants of King Faisal have been among the largest shareholders in two of the biggest agencies. A director of a Saudi government human rights board serves as vice chairman of a major staffing agency. So does a former interior minister, an investment ministry official, and several government advisors. Together, these agencies paint a rosy picture of work in Saudi Arabia. But when things go wrong, families say the workers are often left to fend for themselves. A Kenyan housekeeper, Eunice Aching, called home in a panic in 2022, saying that her boss had threatened to kill her and throw her in a water tank. She was screaming, "Please come save me," her mother recalled. Ms. Acheng soon turned up dead in a rooftop water tank, her mother said. Saudi health officials said her body was too decomposed to determine how she died. The Saudi police labeled it a natural death. One young mother jumped from a third-story roof to escape an abusive employer, breaking her back. Another said that her boss had raped her and then sent her home pregnant and broke. In Uganda, Isiko Moses Waiswa said that when he learned his wife had died in Saudi Arabia, her employer there gave him a choice, her body or her $2,800 in wages. "I told him that whether you send me the money or you don't send me the money, I want the body of my wife," Mr. Waiswa said. A Saudi autopsy found that his wife, Aisha Mimi, was emaciated. She had extensive bruising, 3 broken ribs, and what appeared to be severe electrocution burns on her ear, hand, and feet. The Saudi authorities declared that she had died of natural causes. Roughly 500,000 Kenyan and Ugandan workers are in Saudi Arabia today, the Saudi government says. Most of them are women who cook, clean, or care for children, journalists, and rights groups, who have long publicized worker abuse in the kingdom, have often blamed its persistence on archaic Saudi labor laws. The Times interviewed more than 90 workers and family members of those who died and uncovered another reason that things do not change. Using employment contracts, medical files, and autopsies, reporters linked deaths and injuries to staffing agencies and the people who run them. What became clear was that powerful people profit off the system as it exists. The interviews and documents reveal a system that treats women like household goods, bought, sold, and discarded. Some company websites have an add to cart button next to photos of workers. One advertises Kenyan maids for sale. A spokesman for the Human Resources Ministry in Saudi Arabia said it had taken steps to protect workers. Any form of exploitation or abuse of domestic workers is entirely unacceptable, and allegations of such behavior are thoroughly investigated, the spokesman Mike Goldstein wrote in an email. He said the government had raised fines for abuse and made it easier for workers to quit. He said domestic laborers were capped at 10-hour workdays and were guaranteed 1 day off per week. He said the government now requires employers to pay their maids through an online system and will one day track people who repeatedly violate labor laws. Workers have multiple ways to report abuse: unpaid wages or contract violations, including hotlines, digital platforms, and direct complaint mechanisms, he said. But Milton Turiasima, an assistant commissioner with the Ugandan Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development, said that abuse remained rampant. "We get complaints on a daily basis," he said. Recruiters fan out across East Africa, from impoverished hilltop villages to the cinder block neighborhoods of Nairobi and Kampala, the Ugandan capital. They search for people desperate and ambitious enough to leave their families for low-paying jobs in a country where they do not know the native language. People like Farida Nasanga, a slim woman with a warm but detached air. "We are really poor," Ms. Nasanga said, sitting outside her one-room concrete home in Kampala. Meals are cooked on a propane burner in the alley beside a trickling sewage gutter. She shares a triple-decker bunk bed with her mother and children. Ms. Nasanga said a friend introduced her in 2019 to an agent from Marfi International Recruitment Agency, whose co-owner, Henry Tukahirawa, recently retired as one of Uganda's highest-ranking police officers. Ms. Nasanga agreed to move to Saudi Arabia for a job paying about $200 a month. She found her housekeeping job as pleasant as recruiters had promised. She had her own room. The woman she worked for sometimes even helped with chores. Then one day, she said, her boss's husband walked into her room and raped her. Afterward, she said, he kicked and slapped her. He threw her underwear at her as she retreated to the kitchen, Miss Nasanga said. When she became pregnant, Ms. Nasanga's boss accused her of sleeping with the husband. The Saudi family put her on a plane back to Uganda, said Abdallah Kayonde, who runs a legal aid group that is trying to get compensation for her. Ms. Nasanga knows her employer's name but not her phone number. The only records she has are from the recruiting agency. Ruth Karungi, who owns the agency with her husband, the retired police official, said that when Ms. Nasanga showed up at the office with an infant, the company contacted the Saudi partner agency, which did not respond. The company then notified the Saudi embassy. We trusted that they would address the case through the proper diplomatic channels, Ms. Karungi said by email. She said she did not know if anyone had followed up. Now, Ms. Nasanga is back, sharing a one-room home with her mother, her two older children, and her toddler. A boy with a notably different complexion and hair from his siblings.